All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Palantir Weekly. This is episode number 229. It has been 2 weeks since we've been able to do the show, but we are happy to be here. We've got Amir, Matt Money, I think should be joining in a bit, and Arnaldo, all the way back from Southeast Asia, has a little bit new a hairstyle here. Arnie, how you doing?
My hairstyle is the evolution, the wild evolution of my hairstyle.
He's letting
I
himself
just
go
take a
like Karp. Just let it go. See what happens.
Natural sometimes is better. I just took a grab to get here.
Tell them to get the stock price to go up, bro. Tell them. Dude, it's so funny. You are the typical embodiment of a Palantir investor who believed in Karp at 6, got filthy rich because of believing in Karp at 6, and now you get to just parade around Southeast Asia and have the time of your life.
And that's the beginning.
All right, so we have lots of stuff to talk about. It's been 2 weeks. We got a bunch of deals that happened this week, a bunch of different announcements. Karp had some new interviews. We got a lot of international deals, so there's going to be a ton to dive into, and we will try to get into everything. But I think real quick, let's just start off with the stock, 131.78, $1.50 away from all-time highs. Arnie, you've been gone for 2 weeks, so I'll give the first word to you. What is your reaction to the stock price?
What I really realized is that we are always so much inside this company that we tend to overthink, and sometimes the best is just to be aware of how things are and then be happy to be surprised, because these swings are so wild that if you really pay attention to, oh, now it's up for a reason or now it's down for a reason, you just get mad. Now, sometimes there are news that are so strong that literally make sense to push the stock higher. Sometimes you just see wild movements where essentially nothing really happens. I believe in this last part, we are essentially in between, because there are some very, very big news, some very interesting news. But specifically on yesterday, it felt like, okay, someone just woke up and realized, oh, actually, there is something going on here.
I agree. Amir, your thoughts on basically being at all-time highs for Palantir?
I think the market is coming around to just how unpredictable Palantir as a business is. Like, no one really knows what's going to happen. But we always talk about how expensive or overvalued it is. But if you take it down to the basics, like if there is to be one stock in the stock market that will trade at an extreme premium, it's going to be like one of the most resilient, efficient, scalable, like one of the highest quality companies in the world. It's not like it's a trash company that is like getting this multiple and it's like this bubble that you're just waiting to burst. Like, this is like one of the best businesses in the world. So if there's going to be one stock that is so elevated, it makes sense that it is Palantir. And we also talk about, of course, for us, we've always said that, yes, it is expensive. Yes, it is overvalued. But we don't really know, do we? Because we don't know what growth is going to look like. I mean, we're closing in soon on 30% growth just from existing customers. Like that could be the case this year. Like, even without getting any new clients, like 30% growth could be just from existing customers. So there's just so many unknowns, and it's just a very exciting time, especially with all the new government contracts, international expansion finally starting to get a foothold. I mean, there are no signs of slowing down. Like, if you review the contracts that they've been getting, like the remaining deal values, the remaining performance obligations, everything is just moving up without showing any signs of slowing. So what might seem very overvalued to us now could be completely wrong. Just like when Palantir was trading at 20, I was like, to me, it's probably fairly valued at 12, because that's just the level of understanding I had of the business. And then, these things move fast. So if there is a name to be excited about, it makes sense that it is Palantir. I just made it really simple for myself. I'm never touching any of the Palantir shares I have, and I only buy when it is below fair value, which it was for a brief period a couple of weeks ago, like in the April crash. So I'm very happy I got to buy Palantir again, and doing pretty well. But yeah, as Arnie said, it's really difficult to try to speculate what's going on. But I mean, this company never has any negative like catalyst. It's just positive stuff happening all the time, like for over a year straight. So
that's the hard lesson that we all learned. Never touch your Palantir shares because it can be very costly over time. No, but apart from jokes, it's very interesting to see that something good is happening when you see bears, especially this dividend yield just getting crazy because the stock goes up. And oh yeah, but it doesn't make sense to pay 80 times sales. This is like always trying to troll, but the reality is literally this one is in the process of becoming the best company in the world, because I really struggle to find an argument to say, why is actually Meta better? Why is actually Microsoft better than little Palantir? Obviously, there is a matter of scale that right now is not fully expressed, but let's imagine how Palantir could be once it gets to that scale. And don't forget, like, we are already seeing the benefit of having much better scale from when we were at around like $1 billion revenue to now, that is more than double. We are already seeing the margins expanding, the growth accelerating thanks to the network effects, and we are literally just at the beginning. Only 700 clients, correct me if I'm wrong. So imagine what if we get to 3x, 4x the clients, and we reach a serious scale.
It is exciting. It still feels like we are early. Matt, you're joining just in time. We were just talking about reaction to the stock, basically at all-time highs. Your thoughts?
It's insane, man. Interesting to see it continue to persist. I think everyone's still in anticipation that we're going to see a 40% plus print in terms of revenue growth when it comes to the second quarter. So it'll be interesting times. I guess closing in on a month and a half away, 2 months away from being able to see what the next opportunity looks like in terms of a check-in with that. But I think they're continuing to demonstrate with all the continued contracts and things that they're getting as well. It seems to be a lot of things going in the right direction. So, in terms of the underlying company itself performing, continue to get good clients, continue to make its breakaways into government and many other international opportunities as well. And I think that's what we like to see. We haven't had the opportunity to chat about it, but I'm sure maybe Amir or Arnie brought it up, or maybe yourself, Amit. The fact that Karp met the Prince Mohammed in Saudi Arabia. So things like that, where I think Middle East, there's a lot of opportunity, especially as they branch out. A lot of them are in the energy sector as well, which I know from UDOC and many others that's where a lot of the commercial contracts got started within Palantir. So potentially a lot to offer there as well.
And don't forget, when these countries, when they spend on something, they literally spend big. Having the blessing is truly a blessing here.
Yeah, and I think people are starting to see U.S. government start to play out. I think for the longest time, in the public eyes, of course, we and people who watch us might know a bit more. But I mean, for the general investor, it was just a commercial story. Like Palantir always highlighted U.S. commercial growth. And then there were questions like, okay, what's international growth looking like? What's government looking like? But now we're starting to see government start to play out. I mean, last time I checked, they were already in like 16 different agencies. And that's just starting to expand like massively now with all these deals. And as we can see, like he's front and center meeting all these world leaders. Like he's always been on the world stage, like at these.
Bro, isn't this kind of crazy? Like we're looking at Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, shaking hands with MBS, one could argue the most powerful person in the Middle East, and the president. And in 2022, no one wanted to even think they were associated with this guy. I mean, this is just remarkable after 4 years. And not only is he doing this, he took his company's market cap from 20 billion to 300 billion in the same time.
And let me say, this is actually part of the ripple effect of having a very strong presence also in the market, I would say. Like, imagine when the Palantir brand becomes so strong in the stock market, in like inside also the operations of many companies, inside the government, literally everybody wants to be close to you. But what happens once everybody wants to be close to you and you're actually in the position to actually deploy software at scale, at fast, to solve real problems? Like, you get the inbound, but you can also exploit that inbound to keep boosting your business. I think that's more or less also the game that Jensen is making. Like, now that is a much more public figure than it was 10 years ago. Everybody knows about him now. He knows that he has a social leverage. And I think Palantir is in the process of really exploiting that, so that, oh yes, Palantir is expensive. It is very expensive in terms of stock price. But now with all this brand recognition, the narrative flip, now they can really boost their growth, so that maybe the valuation that seems very high is actually justified.
I think that's true for the commercial space. I mean, within the government, like, he was always prevalent, like even when Palantir was tiny. So I think he's really leveraging that now, and it's cool to be associated with Palantir. So of course that does a lot, like, as you mentioned, from hated to kind of loved. Like, we just saw Salesforce CEO start to follow Palantir, and even Chad on X and stuff. Like, they are moving, and everyone wants to partner up with Palantir now. So software that wins, dominates, works, people want to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think 100% on that. I remember a year or so ago when everybody was talking about the NHS deal and how there was so much hate around that and so much negative press in Europe, and talking about how there's 150 or so billionaires within the world that really control the world and are actually able to make decisions kind of on the world's behalf. It seems to me like, I think Karp has made enough of a dent with respect to the software, as well as Palantir in general, made enough of a dent, just of an impact, that I think those 150 billionaires, instead of fighting against him, are saying, you know what, if you can't beat him, join him. And so that's really allowed him to kind of join the club, which I think is partly the reason why we've seen the stock run so much, is that we're actually starting to see some acceptance. Whereas before, Palantir, I think, was kind of held at an arm's distance. So I think people are starting to realize this guy can actually help us in terms of being able to make our companies better, make ourselves better. And we're better to have him with us in terms of being able to utilize him and leverage him than be against him, I guess. And so I think you've seen a huge pendulum swing with respect to that.
This is I noticed something. Did you guys see that there's coming out a lot of really large YouTubers, like documentary style YouTubers, that are making like these Palantir videos where they like paint them as the most evil company in the world? Like, that's been like really prevalent, and we're talking like millions of views on these videos. I've been starting to notice that, like, more than one, like, people are doing that. Also in my comments on X and YouTube, like, there are a lot of negative comments and negative like sentiment around Palantir. I'm like, where did this come from? Like, out of nowhere. So of course we get the good of being noticed, but we also get the bad. Like, people are like really starting to notice, and you get the good and the bad. But it's like out of nowhere. Like, the past couple of months, people are really pumping out like this agenda against Palantir. And I mean, they are used to it. They've been like, people have been against Palantir from the very start. But it's just interesting to see how the sentiment just like shifts around in regards to Palantir.
So I want to, so we got a lot of deals to talk about, and we'll get to that in a second, but I want to stay on this brand point for a minute, because I just think it's really interesting. All of us have covered the stock for basically, in the company, for 5 years now. And we have seen the 180 that the world has had on the brand, as you're talking about, Amir. And I think part of that has been because Karp has captured people's attention in a way that most CEOs in this country, outside of like a Jensen and an Elon, have not been able to do. And I just want to play this one clip right here. Here's an example. Karp was at the Economic Club of Chicago over the weekend, and he had a soundbite here. And I'm curious about your guys' reaction on not only what he said, but the style of communication he went with in order to get that crowd's attention.
And then our claim to fame really is we absorb the risk of creating value, which is the typical way you build software. The vulgar version, I won't use, the way you're taught to build a software company is, your customer thinks they're getting laid, but they're getting effed. And we used to internally say, no, we're in the mutual pleasuring business. Both sides should be happy. And so we absorb the risk of value creation. So like you will make more money, your enterprise will work better.
So I want to get your guys' reaction to it, but I was coming back from Boston last weekend, and I had this playing while I was coming back, and I'm just sitting there laughing while he's talking about this based on what he said right there, and I was just like, it was one of those moments where it kind of just hit me. I was like, man, this is why I invested. This is why I invested, and maybe it's just me, but I do think it's a lot of other people as well. The ability for him to crack through the noise. We take the risk of value creation. I mean, even that, it just sounds so philosophical about how he's talking about how software companies have to provide value. And then he's funny on top of that by making a little bit of a raunchy joke to kind of hammer down the point. I posted that video and I had some guy who worked at a hedge fund quote tweet it, and he's like, oh, people are buying Palantir because Karp is making sex jokes. And I'm like, this is why most people miss the story at 6, 20, 30. It's like, if you interpret that as a sex joke, then sure. But if you interpret that as a way to get people's attention, to hammer down the point, obviously the crowd was laughing, so the joke landed, and then reinforce the argument with, hey, this is why people are paying us, then I think it's another reason for why people end up buying the stock and continue to believe in Karp as a leader. So Arnie, your reaction to Karp's communication style right there.
I think you said it all when you said, look, that's the reason why these Wall Street people actually missed completely the story, because they focused their attention into, oh, this is a sex joke, rather than what he really means with that. Like, what are the real difference that makes Palantir compare with all the other software companies like Snowflake? And it's becoming clearer and clearer and clearer that there's a very big factor. Like when you compare Palantir with Snowflake, there is a very nice small definition: software that dominates, and it has good effects thanks to that dominance, because also their clients becoming more dominant, and just software that doesn't dominate and just gives you beta, no real superpowers. I think with those sentences, Karp really shapes the essence of the company. We are not here to F you, we are here to grow together. That's why we are always seeing announcements of partnerships, and the beauty of it is when we see these partnerships evolving into new projects, into deeper relationships, maybe expanding what the client does to all the Palantir clients. This is what it really means to create a network together in order to win together, not just be like everybody else. So obviously, the fact that he shared this point with a joke makes it more like nicer to hear.
Charismatic, more charismatic. Yeah.
But when I heard of that, I had the impression, oh, all these people laughing. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, these people would have not laughed.
Not at all.
Like, because now, when imagine Steve Jobs, this kind of people talk, like Elon Musk, now when he talks, everybody listens so careful, and since he's a positive brand overall, people are there to listen and react, and they're not shy to react. like 2-3 years ago, imagine having a laugh when Palantir brand was very shady and not really appreciated. You would have looked like the weirdo. But now people feel to express their admiration.
Yeah. Yeah, Karp is the cool kid in town. He has the hottest company. He's growing, and he can afford to make jokes like that. That actually gets people to care about what he's saying. Amir, your reaction to kind of Karp's communication style and Palantir's brand overall?
It is really unique, and over the years we have started to notice things like when Karp is triggered, he will start to readjust. Like his whole cadence is so unique that you can really tell kind of how it's going for Palantir. And I mean, people have been picking up on stuff like this. Like, of course, we had the sex joke now, and I saw the conversation on X that you had with the hedge fund manager that completely misses it. And even before, people who were early into Palantir, I remember there was a very large YouTuber in the single digits that sold out completely out of Palantir because Alex Karp banged the table in an earnings call. That was just unacceptable to him. I'm like, what are you doing? Imagine he kept on to those shares today, So I don't understand people getting triggered over gestures or a communication style. He's a unique individual. I mean, and what he was saying, the actual context or content of his words, it really reminded me. Do you guys remember there was a conference similar? He was up on stage, and then there was this Korean guy that asked him a question. Basically, okay, my company is looking into various software, and Palantir came up into the conversation. Why should we get Palantir? And he basically said the same, okay, yeah, we're gonna cost a lot of money, and we're gonna make you a lot of money. So some people were that's there was outrage on X, that's not how you sell software. You can't just tell him no, don't buy us, it's expensive. But yeah, Karp was right all along. As long as you unlock value, as long as you create more profit, people will be paying a lot. You will pay 30 million if you can make 100 million. It just makes sense. And that's also why Palantir is so exciting, because the scalability is essentially endless. Because as long as they can keep unlocking value and make your business more efficient, you would be willing to pay more and more. There's no it sounds too much for a license to pay over 100K, whatever. No, if you're gonna make substantial amounts of money, you'd be willing to pay for that as well. So yeah, I mean, Karp, very, very unique, and it's nothing new that people misunderstand him or miss out due to focusing on the completely wrong things. So yeah, it just reminded me of that previous Korean asking him on stage, and the outrage that came from that as well.
Matt, your thoughts on Karp's communication?
I'm going to start with a quote by Jeff Bezos, and I'm going to get it wrong, but basically he was like, the amount of time, or basically the lack of need to try to convince people that you're right is useless. And what he kind of means by that is no matter what, if you're doing the right thing, generally it's going to come off initially as crazy. And so initially when these Palantir guys came, and I started working with them 7-8 years ago, I thought they were crazy too. I was like, you know what? The customer's always right? Why aren't you guys listening to me? And it just comes to show that I might be right when it comes to learning and building upon 100 years of oil and gas sort of company experience, right? And being able to say, this is what I think. But these guys know when it comes to how to organize data, how to actually manipulate data and put it into the right structures to make meaningful changes and utilize the companies that they're working with and partnering with, which is the reason why they call them partners, not so much customers. And they partner with these companies to make fundamental shifts. It's the reason why. And I think it's hard for people to recognize, because when you typically sell software, you're looking for making 1 or 2 percentage gains of efficiency on speeding up some sort of process or something of the like. What I think a lot of companies aren't used to is fundamentally shifting the things that they've been doing for 50 to 100 years. So you think about the great companies that Palantir has been working with, UDOC, Exxon, Kinder Morgan, endless amount of companies, banking companies, crypto companies, governments that have been around for centuries, if not millennia, Japanese companies, Korean companies. It makes you start to recognize that, like, okay, these guys actually do know what they're talking about. And it's really the people that can only look inwards and accept that maybe the way that they've been doing things was right in the 19th century, 1990s, 2000s, 2010s. But as you look towards AI and as things begin to move much faster, they need to make that fundamental shift, because what you've been doing for the past 100 years isn't necessarily going to work for the next 100 years. And so I think it's truly being in recognition that in him standing his ground, that initially sounded crazy, just like people used to think probably Steve Jobs sounded crazy before he came out with the iPhone. They're like, oh, another product that's going to bankrupt Apple. And here we are, you know, holding Jobs in high esteem, holding Karp in high esteem, holding all these people that have really persevered and actually showed us the value of what they're doing and made us truly believe, and not just said, yes, sir, you're right, the customer is always right, whatever you need, right? It's more along the lines of saying, look, we're going into a new revolution. You guys need to organize your data differently, and this is how you do it. And let's partner and figure this out together. Be calm about it. Bring your culture. Be strong with your culture, as Palantir is. And that's what truly made me really love this company. And even though it jumped up 20, 30, 50%, 100%, a couple 100%, I'm like, never would I sell unless it truly got to that, you know, $500 billion to $1 trillion range.
Sorry, can you give us an example, or just the intuition at a broader level? What kind of intuition they brought that you thought, oh, this is wrong, and they were, trust us, bro, we know where we are good at, we respect your expertise, but I think here is how you should do things well. Because, for instance,
the first meeting.
What was it about how data was structured? Something how you actually operate the business? Like, what was that?
They said, bring your laptops to this meeting, and I was expecting they were going to show us some like great presentation, and they were like, no, we're just going to sit around a table for 3 hours, and here's an example of data, and here's an example of some of the bare bones pieces of kit. What would you do? And keep in mind, Foundry was very new at this point, so Foundry hadn't necessarily been developed 100%, and so they had some underlying kind of basic applications, but not any energy applications that we kind of built from the ground up, right? So keep in mind, it was kind of like a basic Excel spreadsheet. Maybe they had the Fusion workbook going. Maybe they had some time series stuff kind of initially built by that point in our first meeting. I'm not 100% certain, which they call Quiver now, but which I'm not 100% looking forward to Quiver 2, but that's a different story for a different day. So anybody that's listening to that's a Palantir employee and wants to give me a reason why they're switching up my Quiver, let me know. I like the way it is currently. I don't want you to change it. But to go back to your question, I was expecting some sort of presentation about like how they're going to revolutionize, what efficiencies they're going to give me. And it was a 2 to 3 hour exercise where I'm literally struggling to learn. And then when it kind of clicked for me, I was at one point very early stages, the #1 builder within Palantir, within UDOC. And so us, like the top 10 users, the people that really were taking off, they set up individual meetings like, what are you using this for? How has this made it better? And they also interviewed me, basically being like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Like, as you would expect, like, not how are you using Excel to do this, that, or the other? Like, what is the fundamental piece of reservoir engineering? I'm a petroleum engineer, but I specialize in reservoir engineering by background. And at this point, I'm like not seeing full products, not full applications being rolled out yet. I'm seeing fighting between our technology organization. I mean, I say fighting, but like our team wants to do this, they want to do that. We're trying to say like this isn't working. They're like, give it some time. You know, just that constant kind of pushback. And I think where I didn't really realize and where it really clicked, this was like months down the road, was it was like, oh, we're the experts when it comes to producing oil and gas. They're the experts when it comes to actually creating operating system, creating things that actually can change and shift your business. Like how I look at Palantir now and our relationship with Palantir now. Chad, don't change Quiver. Or give us a presentation as to why you're changing Quiver, because UDOC is not happy.
All right, so let's get into some deals, because we got a bunch of deals that we got over the past couple of weeks, and we got to look at.
Sorry, I went on a tangent.
Yeah, no, but I think the core point that you're making, Matt, is just that they actually like cared about solving the problems at UDOC.
They cared. They didn't want to make. They weren't trying to make a sale. They weren't trying to get 1 or 2% efficiency gains. They were literally trying to pivot the ship and going in the right direction, because we were a ship that was kind of just anyway. So yeah, very good point.
Yeah. Okay, so a bunch of deals over the past couple of weeks. Just to name a few: SAP, we'll talk about that, largest tech company in Europe. Ecuador, that was announced yesterday. Ecuador's custom agency. Bain, one of the top 5 consulting firms. You had TWG, and then you had this one, which is the first one I want to talk about: Fannie Mae in the United States. This, I just had no idea this was coming, but Palantir is now working with Fannie Mae to stop mortgage fraud. So here's a clip of the announcement, and then I want to get everyone's reaction.
Palantir. We gave their technology 4 real loan files. Now, if you have a mortgage, you know there's a lot of paper in mortgages, right? Reams of paper. We gave them 4 loan files. It was a mortgage case, a fraud case, where someone had docked the financial statements, gave us fake. It was one broker involved in all these 4 cases. It took our really talented investigators 60 days to detect fraud in 2 of these files. It took your technology 10 seconds. Like, holy cow. So we did a
It's a hell of an endorsement. Amir, I want to start off with you. I'm also going to give you the floor for the SAP deal, so you can kind of give me your thoughts on Palantir partnering with SAP and Palantir Fannie Mae. What are your thoughts on those 2 deals?
You know, for this specific clip, I always love this kind of what's called like customer, like when they
Testimonials.
Customer testimonials, because not everyone can relate to or understand the specific use case. Like people are in different professions, industries, and stuff like that. But even during AIPCon, there is one language that everyone speaks, and that is time. So I always love when they're like, okay, this used to take us 9 months. Now we do it in 1 month. Or this used to take us 60 days. We do it in 10 seconds. Everyone can relate to that, even though you might not be able to relate to the specific like use case, the specific business in industry sector, whatever. Everyone speaks time. And I always thought that those were like the most powerful testimonials, especially like when we see them during AIPcons. I just think they are so powerful. And as it relates to SAP, like given warp speed and this whole, like, we're starting to see everyone that people saw as competitors to Palantir, one by one, they are just like linking up and want to partner with Palantir. So we had SAP, something seems to be brewing with Salesforce, and even before that, we had all these hyperscalers. Like people were saying how the hyperscalers can just turn on a dime and outcompete Palantir if they really wanted to. So suddenly they're all partnering up with Palantir. So without like getting into the specific use cases, because I don't really know what the partnership entails, it just sends this strong signal and this wave that, yeah, Palantir is going to be dominating across like every industry and sector. And when we see testimonials like that, it really starts to make sense, because people always ask like, what does Palantir do? But they don't really take the time to understand it. But like this, everyone can understand. When you say like, yeah, it used to take weeks, months, or even years at some in some cases, now it takes seconds. Like everyone can relate to that.
Arnie, I want to get your thoughts, but real quick, let me play the SAP video as well. Then we'll get your thoughts on both those deals.
Christian, delighted to be here. At Palantir, we are maniacally focused on value creation for our partner, our client, people we work with, and our partners. We use Ontology to manage large language models and Foundry to reconcile data. And the combination of those products and your products, we believe, will be extremely valuable for our collective clients and partners. And we're very much looking forward to scaling this partnership, and delighted we've gotten this off the ground. All the best.
So SAP has 400,000 enterprise clients. Fannie Mae, very important agency. Arnie, how did you think of those two very diverse deals coming together in the past week?
What's the common point between them? They are so obsessive into creating value to the clients. Very different kind of deals, but that's the common denominator, and the common denominator that essentially defines Palantir itself. So that's exactly what also Karp mentioned before. Now, with SAP is a bit controversial because I always thought of Palantir as the SAP destroyer, as I tended to think, oh, Palantir is the consultancy destroyer. I was used to think in the earliest days, and we are now seeing Palantir literally partnering with one of the most potential obvious enemies in terms of enterprise software. That I literally just a few hours ago, my friend who works in healthcare medical devices was telling me, everybody hates SAP. Like, you can't live without them, but everybody can't stand the idea that you are there with these parasites coming every year with their consultants, because in order to deploy the new updates, you actually need them, and they make a living thanks to this business. Same thing with biggest consultancies. I was used to think, oh, once Palantir scale big enough, actually this McKinsey, Bain will be essentially seen as not creating value. And Palantir, what is doing is actually partnering with them so that they become the mean, like the verb, to actually show how they can drive the direction. But then for the implementation, you actually need software that works. So
can I just for SAP, like, isn't this a sign that they are actually killing SAP essentially? Because imagine, like, SAP is hyper focused into doing one thing, right? And then you see them, like, they are so massive, and then out of nowhere they're like, okay, we need to partner with Palantir. Isn't that essentially a sign that Palantir is indeed coming for SAP's launch, and this is like, okay, how do we save ourselves?
That's what I thought, because why would they partner with them, right? SAP doesn't theoretically need unless they need Palantir, right?
I think the current problem that you have with SAP is that it's been ingrained in so many organizations at this moment that it powers a lot of, which I think unfortunately is the case, business intelligent analytic tools. Like, I know for a fact that at least in UDoc, which I know a lot of companies do this, our SAP inputs feed directly into Power BI dashboards that have been developed over the past 5 to 10 years. And so to immediately pivot to a Palantir solution is going to take time, and as well as, disrupt what we currently already have. And SAP took forever to kind of get implemented. But what I will say is that 5-10 years ago, before we integrate this new solution that we're kind of been using within UDoc, utilizing SAP within UDoc was a complete nightmare. And a lot of our business on a quarterly basis gets utilized through SAP and then rolled up at the corporate level to kind of build in our business plans into SEC documents and everything the like. Palantir partnered very easily with SAP and within UDoc, or at least maybe not partnered within UDoc itself, but basically looked at what our process was to upload things into SAP and created applications that would spit out in a click of a button basically everything that you need in the order that you need into SAP template for upload. Before that, before we had that implementation, the one-click Palantir solution to put it into the SAP format, the amount of nightmarish like time consumption, things that I would hear from our frontline employees was just, it takes hours to load SAP and this. And believe it or not, the thing that I see most problematic within our SAP loading now, that people are like, oh, I didn't know that data was there. Oh, that's spurious or not real data. I didn't think that would be in there. all of that I continue to see throughout, because literally my job is to pretty much get everything prepared for the corporate roll up. I don't want to get too much into it, but basically I just look at the portfolio of everything and kind of and I'm like, what is this data point? What is that data point? That looks weird. They're like, oh, all those weird data points are because they're not utilizing some sort of Palantir system to upload to SAP that then loads up into our system. It's those pressure points and everything that we're seeing being rolled up is perfectly fine. It's only the times where people have to manually upload. So I just think it's very interesting now that you're starting to see them partner much more so. But I think it's because they've become used to, at least at UDoc, creating opportunities and data sets that feed directly into SAP templates that might allow them to work very easily in other companies as well.
Well, from Palantir's standpoint, consider that SAP is one of the biggest European companies, and the European side of the commercial business is actually a relatively weak one. So there is a clear intention there. Okay, we need to shake things up. Now we are in the position of strength. So when they make some partnerships, actually, they are the strong side here. I tend to think that SAP could be open to this kind of deals. Now, terms are not really disclosed, so we can just speculate, because they know that so far these clients have some of their most important data within SAP. The problem is true value is not when you just have the data, is when you operationalize this data to actually get meaningful insights. And they're seeing essentially an unmatched value that they can't really compete with. So this could be driven a little bit by fear, but the fact that now Palantir's brand is actually very strong, even these companies that could be seen as enemies need to get a little bit closer.
Yep. I would agree. And Amir, your perspective on this whole SAP thing is kind of the go-to-market that Palantir is deploying. Or let me ask a better question. In Europe, do you think this could lead to better growth now that they're working with SAP?
I didn't actually consider that standpoint until Arnie just said it, actually, but it does make sense. Like, I just viewed it from like, okay, we know that Warp Speed launched. It's essentially a direct competitor or threat rather to SAP. So I was just viewing it from that angle and trying to understand, okay, why would they be doing this? And as we mentioned, it's not only SAP, it's Databricks, it is like everyone that was this Palantir killer. But as Arnie just mentioned, it actually makes a lot of sense. As we all know, international commercial has been stagnant for years. Like, nothing is happening there. Palantir pulled out their employees from Europe. He publicly said, yeah, I'm not gonna spend my time here. Like, you want to be a part of this. But now actually that way to view it actually starts to make sense. Like, okay, how do you like unlock all of these like European clients essentially? Like, SAP is pretty much everywhere, as we just talked about. So that is a perfect way. And when clients suddenly like, oh my God, we're starting to get some value out of this software. Like, where did that come from? Oh, okay, they're partnering with Palantir now. So we don't know the details. We don't know the the impact that this will have, but it does send a kind of a signal that they are actually starting to be more active in Europe. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see if there's something else, but sentiment is definitely shifting, and I think they're starting to realize that both Europeans and European companies are stagnating, and Palantir's revenue in the region is also stagnant. So match made in heaven, huh?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now these weeks we have seen so many partnerships announcements here and there. Is there something among them that really triggered you? Maybe not for the size, but for the consequential impact that makes you excited?
Easily oh, sorry. Who was that?
Oh, go ahead, Amir.
I was going to say the Golden Dome. Maybe that was on the agenda, Amit, so we can...
Yeah, we can pivot to that. A couple other just deals I want to mention. Bain, so that was another consulting partnership from a go-to-market perspective. That's really good. TWG. There was another one that I'm forgetting the name of. Arnie posted it, but let me get back to it real quick. And then Ecuador. So Ecuador, again, another international name, which is very important. Oh, Maven. Well, we'll talk more about that in a bit. That has to actually do with some of the New York Times stuff that we had. With the New York Times article that we had this morning. And there's another partner. Oh, this was Divergent. Yes, Divergent. So this was for Warp Speed, on-demand advanced manufacturing. It's just there's so many deals that have happened in the past 2 weeks, and it really does feel like that 40% growth quarter is on the way. So this kind of leads us into Golden Dome. We didn't get any official announcement that Palantir is working on Golden Dome. Trump did make an announcement last Wednesday that there is an $830 billion 25-year project allocated to Golden Dome, which is very similar to the Iron Dome in Israel. Trump did mention L3Harris, Lockheed, and Raytheon that would be involved. He did not mention SpaceX, Anduril, or Palantir, which theoretically could be involved. So, yeah, Amir, I guess your thoughts on what it would be like if Palantir could get a slice of that contract.
I mean, we are like the numbers thrown around, like everything is a bit ambiguous, and we also don't know like the scale. Like there was talk about Canada really wants to be a part of this, but they will have to pay up or link up, basically like SAP with Palantir. So I think it all started with like the real hype came with Titan, and then we had Maven, and we're just seeing like the future of warfare. Like basically, it is to me a given that Palantir will be a part and take a much bigger cut of the defense budget spending, because like you're spending all of these hundreds of millions on like antiquated ways to fight wars. Like we're seeing that's not the future anymore. Like drone warfare, of course, will benefit Anduril, but you also need the software part, and Palantir is proving themselves like globally in various conflicts and missions and stuff like that. Like it's mission proven. That's the whole point. Like it just makes sense to me that Palantir will be front and center, as Dan Ice likes to say, of like this new, we call it revolution of like the defense budget spending, because we are now talking about, okay, how do we make government more efficient? Like how do we cut spending? Where are we wasting money? So to me, this Golden Dome, like what are the figures? Like 60 billion? Who knows what that's gonna end up looking like? And Palantir will be a part of that, I am sure. It's just massive, like everything. Like they're part of everything.
Look, when I hear Palantir potentially be involved into this kind of deals, seeing the reaction of Sham, essentially, well, we can't only speculate, but that smile to me means something. So we can know, okay? It feels like we went from, everything seems so impossible to crack. We know Palantir has the capability to actually crack this code, but actually now I feel like it's almost impossible Palantir is not involved into this. And especially once we see the convergence of this amazing work that Palantir has been doing with Maven. Palantir right now is literally the most important software provider when it comes to security, because Maven having such a big expansion, the number of users is quadrupling since last year, something of that sort, tells you, okay, everybody's adopting that. And since this is technology that matters because it's related to targeting, so very sensitive and it's super precise, you need to train people to actually work on this stuff. This is essentially a perpetual contract in my mind. Obviously, it can't be written as a perpetual contract in the deals, but the more this stuff is used, people are used to use it, the more value it delivers, the more difficult it is to detach it. And what are the alternatives that the US government has to build such an important thing like the Golden Dome, if not Palantir, Anduril, and these emerging defense stars?
Yeah, this Maven thing was impressive, dude. I mean, like, it blends in with the Golden Dome project and the idea of just like more defense spending in general. But this is not speculation. This is real. $795 million extension. We originally got $480 million last May. So it's a 5-year deal for about $1.275 billion. It's the first $1 billion contract Palantir has gotten in its entirety. It's real. I mean, like, this is real money that Palantir's getting. Now, granted, the stock is priced for extreme growth, so it's like we kind of need to get these deals. But the fact that we are landing them, getting them, and in the next 5 years, they're probably going to give Palantir another extension because this is going to continue, and it's going to be hard to replicate it, as Arnie said. It makes you wonder how big can the government business truly become, which kind of transitions us into the next topic right here. There was a New York Times pseudo hit piece that was released today, and it came out in the morning. Stock was a bit down when the hit piece came out. But what was funny about this is that the opinionated part of the article, which was essentially saying that, Trump is being a bit too friendly to Palantir, might have appealed to some people that cared about the New York Times opinion piece on Palantir. But the headline that made all the business wires and the big accounts on Twitter that were kind of tweeting what the article was about is, hey, Palantir is getting billions of dollars from the Trump administration. And it seems like all the investors were like, oh, really? I didn't know that. I'm going to buy Palantir. Palantir stock was up 7% on the day. So, Matt, any reaction to this idea of the New York Times kind of going in a hit piece direction, but it really backfiring with Palantir up 7%, primarily based on this idea that they told the entire world Palantir is getting billions of dollars?
Well, I think New York Times is consistently a company, a media organization, unlike AK Media, that tries to fearmonger people. And really tries to pull on their heartstrings. And through my experience, Palantir is probably one of the most secure companies in terms of making sure cybersecurity is a key piece. Access to data is held very lock and key. And so to me, I think it's very interesting when they start to poke and say that, you're giving them access to medical records and personal records, etc. I mean, anyway, I just think that's yes, you are, but to think that it's going to be widely distributed amongst like people that shouldn't have it, I think is very interesting. But I also think it just goes to show that Palantir is something that is a pivotal point within this government, and I think that the reason why they wrote the hit piece in general is because of the current administration. New York Times, being a left-like organization, doesn't necessarily like what's going on in the Trump administration. And so the fact that even though you have a very liberal CEO, an outspoken liberal CEO, partnering so well with the Trump administration, I think the New York Times actually does not like that. And so I think you hit the nail on the head that it goes to show that no matter what, these guys are truly about their their business and culture, and being able to make sure that they do number one, which is in value number one, which is caring for the West and being able to make the West as powerful as possible, rather than focusing specifically on the things that are going to get people emotionally upset, like medical records being shared and blah blah blah. It's the same sort of rhetoric that they used with the NHS deal in the past several years.
Can you show again the title of this article? Trump taps Palantir to compile data on Americans. I just saw the the reference article by Yahoo News that changed it to Trump taps Palantir to create a master database on every American.
This is obviously trying to say Palantir is the big bad boogeyman that's trying to spy on you. That is the implication of this headline.
And look, if you are an investor, a potential investor, and you read the sentences of, Trump is essentially pushing towards creating an ontology that goes across systems from all the agencies. It's like, wait a second, that's exactly the Palantir thesis. We are the operating system of the modern government, the modern enterprise. So if you go through the article with the investor mindset, that's actually a very strong confirmation. Now, I don't really I couldn't read the article, so I'm more a bit speculative here. But while I was coming back, I saw a tweet. There was a reference of Elon Musk Doge essentially promoting Palantir. Have you seen some comments in that line referred to that article?
No, I can try to find it.
Okay. So what I read, and again, I'm speculating because I couldn't read the original source, was saying that essentially Palantir is getting more and more involved in the government thanks to the push from Elon Musk, thanks to Doge. But apart from that, I think the reaction that we got, essentially in the last hours, we went from being almost flat to boom, plus 8%, could be due to this article, yes, but for a very simple and true reasoning. If you go on Palantir's investor relation website, there is no reference to this Maven expansion yet. There is no official press release, which means that outside our little bubble of Palantir obsessive maniacs, essentially nobody knew about this Maven yet.
Which is your point about the New York Times, and that's why I think the stock pumped, because we knew that Palantir got the Maven contract, but most general people didn't know. And the New York Times still has a massive audience, and so when they say, "Hey, Palantir's getting $1 billion worth of deals," some people might be like, "Oh my God, that's scary, Palantir." Other people might be like, "Maybe I need to buy some Palantir." Wait a second, hold on, you know.
In hindsight, now that I see the lack of an official press release yet from Palantir, and the fact that it didn't really had too much coverage on the media, made me think, oh, actually, that was a good trade.
Right. Amir, your reaction to this New York Times headline today?
Yeah, I think you guys might be correct on the opening of the eyes to the general public to wait, Palantir is doing what? And then spreading throughout. But I always think that this angle is so interesting because it's been around forever. Do you guys remember when Ross Gerber said Palantir makes Facebook look like Girl Scouts? In terms of Palantir collects your data, sells your data, without even realizing that Palantir themselves, they don't have access to the data. They deliver the software that the clients use themselves to operationalize their data. They don't actually have access to your data. And the same thing happened with the NHS deal. They're like, this is the most sacred piece of data that we have. We can't give this data to an American company. And then you read weeks later, yeah, we shortened the queues by weeks. So many more hospital beds are available, all this positive stuff. And no one cares. They're just stuck on the American company, my data. I think this phase 2 will pass. Just like the sentiment has shifted around so many times for Palantir, I think it's only a matter of time when the outcomes actually weigh a lot heavier than these small hit piece titles about the big bad Palantir gets your data. Well, because it's not even true. So I mean, it's not substantiated into anything. But as in terms to the pop, it could very well be, as you guys speculated, that people are like, oh my God, Palantir is actually entering everywhere. So it's an interesting day to be sure.
It was just hilarious because the headline came out this morning and stock was down, and then after about 20 minutes, everyone was like, wait a second, this might not be the worst thing in the world. Matt, any reaction to this headline?
I mean, it's a typical New York Times headline, but I think it's very interesting. I mean, I see people that move teams within UDoc and have to contact Palantir to give them the right access to the new data and get rid of the old access to the old data. So it's pretty funny, like I said, Palantir, when it comes to security of data and everything like that, I have access to all the data because I'm cool, but not really. But I pretty much have pretty good access to pretty much everything. But in order to get that, I had to pass certain security clearances within UDoc as well as get background checks outside of UDoc. So not saying that necessarily has to be 100% associated with Palantir, but I've seen so many times people like, I joined the team 2 days ago, I still don't have access. It's that's, to me, I think that's a great thing. And I see that all the time about people like, can't we just have a general account that we can log into? It's like, no, you can't. You need to have the data tied to your account, your email, so that way that things are ensured to be and logged to be in the right place at the right time.
Yep, that is fair. We're going to end off with some super chats right here. Thank you everyone for joining on the 229th episode of Palantir Weekly. It still is just been a crazy journey for the past 4 years, but we're here and hopefully we'll be here for the next decade. Rob, thank you for the $5 super chat. Gentleman, Dan Ives says Palantir can reach $1 trillion market cap in 2 to 3 years. When do you think it'll happen? Arnie, you think Dan Ives is right? 2 years for $1 trillion?
It's tough, but I have to remind myself of how harsh I was when Dan Ives first started covering the company. And I was like, "Oh, come on, this is an AI candy just to make fund managers excited." And actually, he turned to be right. I was again kind of skeptical. I think when he published the $50 price, and I made a post sharing, wait a second, like it is possible, but it's really, really, really ambitious. And within now, I would love, for obvious reasons, Palantir to reach 1 trillion. I'm personally skeptical. So if I have to bet yes or no, I would probably bet on the no, even if I'm absolutely confident that we will get to that 1 trillion point. It's all a matter of when. Now, on the positive side, we could say that one possibility to get there. So now we are at 300 something. So it is more than a 3x. In order to get there, we essentially need to more than 3x, at least 3x, but more than 3x the free cash flow. To me, it is not completely impossible if you think of it, because as the company expands, it is accelerating in terms of revenues, and the margins can further expand thanks to the scalability of the business. Essentially, now they are a product company, they just need to distribute, and now more and more partners that are only specialized into selling are taking the burden of managing the more client relation, the implementation phase, while Palantir is getting more and more efficient, just focusing on the product. And we know from X that Palantir is also working on AI FDE, which could massively boost the capabilities that the Palantir's general employees have, while also empowering the partners. So there are some potential combinations that could create an absurd acceleration. So this, technically speaking, if the multiples stay the same, my own judgment, very hard they stay the same, this high for so long. In 3 years, we would need more than 3x the free cash flow as of today. We could get there with further multiple expansion, but at that point, I would say, whoa, that would mean reaching something like 100 EV sales, which I personally find it very hard. But outside the more financial angle, if you ask me, okay, is there the condition to make Palantir be used 3x, 4x more in the next 3 years? On that side, I would say, doesn't sound that unreasonable, because we know that Palantir is able to unlock tremendous network effects within an organization and between organizations. And now we know also that the pricing of the contracts is more and more pushed toward consumptions. So if we reverse and ask ourselves, okay, in 3 years, there will be an ontology level awareness usage that is at least 3x more. It's like, okay, that sounds reasonable to me. So My personal expectation is no, even if I would love it, but I still consider it a concrete possibility if all the stars really, really align.
But Arnie, the question was, when do you think it will happen? So erase those 10 minutes and give us a number.
No. Well, the question was, do you think it happened in 2-3 years? Arnie said no. So I guess you're assuming, Arnie, it'll happen eventually, just not in 2 years. Because I agree with you. That's my take to that question. Like, I don't think it's gonna happen in 3. I think Dan Ives is being a little bit too excited there.
My first thought was I would be more for between 5 to 7 years, which is already a very high return rate. Now I want to check on Excel essentially what kind of rate we should have to justify that 5 years.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, Amir, do you think in 3 years you can get there?
No, okay, look, I don't think in 3 years, but then again, I also didn't think we would go from 30 to 300 billion in 1 year. So who really knows with this stock? I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. I personally, if I had to say yes or no, probably no in 3 years. As for the timeline, when, probably 5 to 7 years, like end of this decade is more likely in my head. Short and concise, Arnie, you might learn something.
Matt, your thoughts on Palantir to a trillion? When?
Yeah, 7 to 10 years. I think is likely more than 3. Am I saying 3 is out of the realm? No. But if you think that you have about $1 billion in sort of ops cash being generated and you want to you need to maintain all the current valuations and continue to grow at a 40% 40% revenue growth from here. So that is a little tough for the next 3 years, and it wouldn't be like 2027. It would be 2028 is when I'm kind of calculating at the earliest it could potentially happen. But I think there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts that have to happen in order for that. But I'm more with Amir. I definitely think it's going to take a little bit longer. I guess Arnie said he thinks it would take longer as well. I'm just surprised, like Amir, that we're even talking about 300 billion. To be very frank with you, I mean, did I think that the company would eventually be worth 250 to 500 billion at the IPO? Maybe not at the the direct listing. I didn't necessarily know if I had enough information, but within several months of it, I definitely started talking about 250 to 500. That I think we would get there within 3 to 4 years. No, so that's very surprising to me that we're even talking about $300 billion market cap. I don't know. I just think I'm putting my Steve Fiorillo hat on here. I definitely think there's going to be some sort of pullback in some way, shape, or form, or flatline. Not to say that the company metrics themselves won't continue to do extremely well as we've seen so far, but the valuation I think is still stretched, and it's either going to need to grow into those valuations very well, or the company's going to have to continue to accelerate as it has been showing over the past several quarters, which I think is why the valuation is yet to sort of ease up a little bit.
Do you know what's the rate of growth that is needed in terms of stock price? So if we assume the multiples remain the same, how much time is needed? What's the rate of growth that is needed to arrive at 1 trillion in 3 years?
For the stock price or for the revenue?
Let's make this experiment to be clear. If the multiples remain the same, right now Palantir has an enterprise value to free cash flow of around 160x.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's assume the multiple remains the same and the free cash flow just expand. If the multiple remains the same, what's the rate of growth needed to arrive to 1 trillion in 3 years?
Is it like 60 or something?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, roundabout
50. So
50,
very close.
Yeah.
Because if you compound at 50% rate, essentially you start doubling very, very soon. And we should ask ourselves, okay, maybe there's a world where Palantir can sustain 160%, 160x free cash flow if the 50% growth is maintained. Right now, the revenues are growing above 30, and the margins are expanding. So the free cash flow is actually compounding more or less at that rate. So this tells me, okay, it's not unthinkable that we can get there in 3 years. Because look at how fast we can, like how much the growth rate changes, how fast you go into to a trillion. Share my screen, please. I mean, very, very random, like very simple numbers. This, obviously, there's a very, very big if the multiples remain the same, which is a very strong assumption because right now Palantir in the universe of software companies is very on the highest level of other comparable companies. But let's be optimistic and let's assume the multiples are the same. If you grow at around 20%, it takes 6 years to get 1 trillion. If you grow at 50%,
7 years, right? You have 6 twice.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah, but yeah.
If you compound at 50%, it takes only 3 years. So if we assume 30%, it would take 5 years. From the market cap. So if the multiples remain the same and the free cash flow just grows 30% for 5 years, it would take 5 years to get to 1 trillion. That's the intuition. If we keep seeing the free cash flow growing at more than 50%, thanks to the revenue growth combined with margin expansion, which I personally believe we still have much upside. When right now we are in the 40-45% zone, I think that could be pushed to 60 or even higher. There is enough space for the free cash flow to expand more than 30-50%. So
yeah,
ambitious, not unreasonable.
Yeah, and also in order to even keep the multiple and make this like, so you might say, okay, if it grows at 20%, it will take 7 years. But if they only grow at 20%, there's no way they're going to keep the multiple. So it's going to be a lot longer than that. So the realistic scenario is, yeah, if you compound at 50%, you might be able to make the argument for like maintaining the multiple. So that's like the base case, like to consider. Like less than that, I think it's really difficult to keep the multiple. Like ideally, it would be even more than 50%.
Dude,
Really?
the Bears, if we get to 1 trillion in 3 years, like
Imagine the dividend dude posts on X every day.
Dividend dude, all these. I don't know.
Hoping for that to happen. Like all of this free engagement for this effortless posting. Like,
I mean, to get a sense how this engagement works against Palantir, think that this guy has already more following than I have. Like he criticizing Palantir as the core thing has made more success on X in terms of following than us being right.
Imagine, imagine that you build your whole like career out of PE is expensive for one specific company, and you just post that like every day for months on end, and then you become bigger than Arnie. Like, what the hell? What kind of world are we living in?
Yeah, but also it's about respect too. I mean, I think, you know, if you build your account of just saying Palantir is expensive, there's lack of respect. I mean, it's just useless engagement. Whereas Arnie has, you know, helped a lot of people get rich.
Yeah, look at those good looks.
And he's very good looking as well. You know what's interesting also about this $1 trillion question is there are some people right now who, for the life of them, cannot understand 300 billion. And we've all tried to understand it and justify it in different ways. A lot of us did not think it would happen this quick. But one way, and I brought this up 2 weeks ago, I'm going to bring it up again. These are the top 10 stocks that were traded in the options market today. Palantir was number freaking 3 behind NVIDIA, $3.5 trillion company, Tesla, $1.2 trillion company. So when it comes to just people buying the stock, forget the fundamentals or the narrative or the story, just buying it to be able to sell calls against it, sell puts against it, whatever they're doing, put credit spreads, all these fancy different financial instruments in the derivatives market, Palantir is becoming one of the names that people want to use to gain leverage on. And as a result, that could theoretically also just support the stock price because you have so many buyers that are buying it for the pure sake of owning it with options, which is not the best reason for why, it could keep staying higher, but it is a reason that I think we have to acknowledge as well. And it goes back to its brand, right? Because people know what Palantir is now. And that's why they want to trade options on it as well.
Sorry, were those dollar amount or
no, those were contracts, the actual contracts themselves. So today alone, May 31st or May 30th, Palantir traded 2.08 million contracts, 1.3 calls, 763,000 puts.
And the price of NVIDIA right now is
135.
Yeah.
Same as Palantir, pretty much they're comparable.
No, because I was thinking, okay, this is the dollar volume, but since each contract has a different price, which is driven by the stock price, are these numbers really comparable? But NVIDIA and Palantir have a price that is relatively similar, which means the dollar amount of these options actually is comparable, which is already insane.
Yeah. Even if the options themselves are priced differently, the fact that if you buy 100 shares of NVIDIA to sell a call against, you're spending 13,500. You're spending 13,000 for Palantir if you buy 100 shares of 130. So it's relatively the same as well. Dieter, thank you for the $50 super chat. Palantir will be vindicated. Thank you, Dieter, for that. Really appreciate it. When I see Arnaldo, Amir, and Matt in person, I will get them a beer with this $50 super chat. And we'll end it off with this. Nicholas, thank you for the $10. What did you think of Dario, the CEO of Anthropic, saying that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs? So he was the first AI CEO over the past couple of days to kind of sound the alarm and say, hey, guys, you might need to tax AI companies. A lot of these white-collar jobs are going to be unemployed over the next 5 years. And he said it might start next year. Amir, any thoughts on a big, large language model CEO saying that we should be a little afraid of AI?
Yeah, but at the same time, you have Jensen saying the opposite. He's saying that there are so many jobs to fill right now and that AI will empower the workforce rather and grow GDP at a unprecedented rate. So you have this kind of tug of war. Of course, that's on everyone's mind, okay, what are the real implications of AI when it becomes widespread? So you have different takes. I'm not, to be honest, I am not sure what camp I am in. Karp and Palantir themselves have this vision that AI and humans are the best combination. They used to make this chess reference, if you guys recall, in the earlier days, where they made this chess engine that could beat every human, but it will never beat a human and an engine together. It's the best combination. So I'm kind of in that camp. I'm hoping that's what the future looks like, where we are empowered by AI and become much more efficient, but it's kind of too early to tell. But yeah, Jensen says the complete opposite. Anthropic CEO says that it will wipe out jobs. I'm not too sure myself.
Look, I think there is a cynical point where you can say, okay, if with an algo that in 10 minutes can do what very high-level professionals take, 60 days, there is a reason to think, okay, many jobs could be automated. But it is also true what Chad replied to this answer that I think deserves a spotlight, that says exactly, that's short-sighted. What if you can make those people 10x more effective? This will affect the GDP, how it grows. So when we analyze these kind of sentences, we need to think, yes, the first order consequence of AI is you make 10x the work, 500x the work in a fraction of the time, which means some people become less useful. But it is also true that you have this tool that these people can potentially learn to deploy, and overall as a scale, which means more growth. And when you have more growth, you can have more opportunities to deploy these tools to drive further growth. So meaning that a person with a better technology becomes much more effective. Imagine how powerful each of us are thanks to a smartphone that becomes better and better, regardless of our job. So the world adjusts itself, and I'm more aligned to Chad's vision rather than the CEO of Anthropic one.
Matt, your final thoughts on if AI is going to take away all our jobs?
I think a lot of people thought the initiation of the computer would probably sacrifice a lot of jobs as well, and maybe even the use of a calculator would sacrifice a lot of jobs. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I think I agree with Amir. You know, is this going to be something that, as Chad has kind of showed, it's not necessarily, at least in the chat when Chad was talking, it's not necessarily about eliminating jobs. It's more about allowing your employees or the people that work for you to be more efficient. And I would say, you know, I think a lot of people would have said the same thing about the computer 50, 60 years ago. Oh, having a PC would get rid of people's jobs. But in fact, majority of people utilize the PCs to make their jobs more efficient on a day-to-day basis. So I think it really just depends on how and what lens you look at it. And I think it's still slightly too early to tell. If you think about it from my perspective, you know, if I'm able to have autonomous cars and robots, etc., that might allow me to work longer hours instead of having to say, go to the grocery store and pick up this, that, or the other, or cook at home, or do my own laundry, right? Instead of doing those things, which are going to be able to take up hours of my time, I could use it to work more and actually generate, pivotal gains, whether that's getting more oil and gas out of the ground, or, looking at more real estate to potentially buy, or investing more in the markets, which generates economic value itself, So I think it all is just a head scratch as to what particularly it will eventually be utilized for. And I think that people are always going to lean towards their most dramatic thing. And I think that it'll be somewhere in the middle between actually being something that, is used for efficiency. And I think some of it might actually be used for losing frontline employees, but I think it's just too early to tell.
Well, just to finalize what Chad shared, he also wrote, since it's difficult to find in the comments, think of AI as infinite labor, and your people are now the manager of a team of AI agents, and get 10x, 100x more done. Don't be limited to trying to eliminate people.
Yeah, and Palantir has never been in the business of replacing people. There was a partnership they did with Stellantis a couple years ago, and Karp specifically, when that PR was announced, talked about how they want Foundry to become as Chad was saying, force multiplier for the people in the factories, not something that replaces the people in the factories. I mean, like even the structure of society, Karp has talked about so many times, like people need a purpose, and usually that purpose comes from a job, right? Something that they're doing throughout the entire day. So it's not a good idea at all for people to not have work. Obviously, there is going to be some technology that will replace people, because it's just not going to be economically efficient to have more humans if AI can do it. But I think Palantir is going to be a piece of software that actually tries to make humans more productive versus replace them. And as a result, that's going to be important.
That's the entire DNA with which the company has been built. Not to use just AI, but literally have the human plus the computer. Like Sham did an entire presentation on these like 15 years ago or so.
Yep, agreed. All right, folks, that is it for us. It's been 2 weeks. It is good to be back on Palantir Weekly. Thank you to the 1,000 people that are with us on a Friday night, Saturday morning early, or maybe Saturday very early if you are in Europe like Amir. But we appreciate everyone being here. It's been an incredible journey. Palantir basically back to all-time highs, and we will be here every single week analyzing it and continuing to see what's going on with Palantir. The SCSP event is next week in DC on Monday, so I will be there as well, and I'll get some coverage on what's going on with Palantir. They're a big sponsor of the event. And yeah, we will keep covering Palantir.
Yep. Please follow everybody in here. Arnie, Amir, myself, and AK Media doesn't need any more followers.
Yeah, everyone's Twitters and YouTube's in the description. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. We will be back next Friday, and we'll see you next time on Palantir Weekly.
Good seeing you all. Have a good nap, Amir and Arnie.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Have a good one.